So I just saw Upgrade, and it was... Now, before I go any further, I should probably mention that I do recommend this. There are a lot of issues that I have with it, but overall, I think that people should probably check it out. Upgrade is a grindhouse-style science fiction action horror-ish movie directed by Lee Winnell, the guy who played Adam in the Saw movies, and he also wrote the first 3 Saw films. His directorial debut was Insidious Chapter 3, which I had absolutely no interest in seeing, particularly because I did not like the first movie at all, but seeing a new and seemingly interesting concept from him got me fairly excited to see this movie. I mean, just look at the trailer. People are shooting bullets out of their fucking arms. What more could you want? Now, after watching the film, I did enjoy it, but there are so many aspects that could have been improved. This is the type of movie that works really well as something that doesn't take itself too seriously, but unfortunately, much of the movie does take itself seriously. It's massively entertaining as soon as we get to the crazy fight scenes, but that doesn't happen until about half an hour through the movie. And even once we get to the fight scenes, there's still a lot of boring filler in between. The action scenes have a lot of really fun and well choreographed movements, and the camera work during these scenes is really well executed. Outside of these fight scenes, though, it feels kinda cheap. The acting isn't great, the dialogue's pretty sloppy, and despite the impressive camera work during the action scenes, it's really lacking elsewhere. The lighting is way too dark, everything feels like it's framed way too close. There are environments in this film that are probably a lot bigger than what they showed, but you could barely tell. During most of the movie, the filmmaking feels really uninspired. I really loved a lot of the ideas that were presented in this film. Shooting bullets out of your arm is pretty fucking cool. Having a robot inside your body that can take over and control you is pretty fucking cool. Conceptually, a lot of this film felt like it could have been an episode of Black Mirror, and I kind of wish that it was instead. In that scenario, we probably wouldn't have gotten nearly as much filler. And once again, during the filler scenes, even the futuristic concepts are kinda lame. For most of the film, we get a really bland and cliched interpretation of the future. The vehicles look really dumb and obnoxious. The random body mods on civilians look like they could have come from any uninspired sci-fi shit movie. Again, there's a lot of great things that this movie has to offer. I just wish that it was more consistent the whole way through. I guess now's the time to get into spoiler talk, so if you don't want to hear spoilers for this movie, just click to this part in the video. There's your warning. 3, 2, 1. There's a decent amount about this movie that just does not make that much sense. The initial incident of this movie involves some criminals killing his wife, and although there are drones watching from above and detecting the crime as it happens, the criminals were using some sort of technology that made the drones unable to scan their retinas to identify them. But what I don't understand is why the drone couldn't have just followed them. It's a drone, it's flying, it's detecting the crime as it's happening. It's watching the unidentified suspects leave. That was really weird. Later in the movie, they throw in this absolutely bizarre plot device. They're in the middle of interrogating some guy to find out more information, but the computer chip's like, hey, the blonde guy is trying to shut us down remotely right now. But apparently it doesn't happen right away, and they have just enough time to get to a hacker to stop this from happening. But why didn't they do that beforehand? The computer chip known as STEM was like, hey, this is something that I thought he would do, so here's the address of a hacker nearby. So why didn't you do that before? There's a twist at the end of the movie that the blonde guy and STEM were working together the whole time, and getting him to the hacker was part of their plot, but I don't understand why STEM couldn't have just said, hey, let's go to this hacker so that he doesn't shut us down remotely, instead of waiting until it actually happens? Was he even being shut down remotely? It seems like the concept for the scene was written first, and then trying to explain why it happened was just secondary. Man, wouldn't it be cool if he was trying to get somewhere, but his limbs were shutting down remotely one by one, and he just barely makes it by crawling? I just don't understand why STEM or the blonde guy would make it more difficult for him to do what they apparently want him to do. I don't get it. And speaking of the twist ending, that doesn't make any fucking sense. I fail to understand exactly why the blonde guy was under STEM's control. I mean, it wasn't controlling him or anything. What did he have to bargain with? Why didn't you just destroy STEM? Why didn't you just say no. Despite how stupid the twist was, I do love how the film ended. It's delightfully morbid that our main character gets trapped in his own subconscious, and the final shot of the film is pretty great. It's just that the movie didn't really make much sense getting to that point. Overall, I enjoyed this movie, but there is a lot holding it back. It's kind of like a bad movie with some great movie in it. The scenes that are done well are ones that I would consider to be worth the price of admission. So check it out if you haven't already. And I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10.